190 sacred texts, written on continents that did not know each other, by civilizations separated by millennia, in languages that never crossed paths, no channel of influence, no possibility of plagiarism. The result should have been chaos, each culture with its own version of truth. That is not what appeared. These texts say the same 5 things, in the same logical sequence. 5 conclusions that dismantle everything you believe about who you are and about the fear that governs your decisions without you noticing. Your grandparents carried this fear. Your parents inherited it. You repeat it now, thinking it is yours. Pierre Hadot spent 40 years at the Collège de France investigating why the West amputated these conclusions from its own philosophical body.
You were trained to never assemble the pieces.
There is an exercise almost no one does. Take the sacred books of the world, all of them, and read them the way you read spreadsheets. No reverence, no devotion. Comparing verses, cross-referencing translations line by line, sniffing out patterns in the data like a detective who refuses to believe in coincidence. Since the age of 10, decades of it, over 190 scriptures pass through this sieve. Hindu Upanishads, Buddhist sutras, Gnostic gospels, Egyptian pyramid texts, Mayan codices, Taoist scrolls, and dozens more, Judaic, Islamic, Hermetic, Confucian, Sumerian, Indigenous from 3 continents, traditions that never traded a chicken between them, separated by oceans and millennia, with no contact that could justify resemblance. The result should have been chaos, each culture with its version of truth, each tribe with its answer, each sacred book pulling in a different direction. That would be expected. That would be logical. That is not what appeared. These texts do not say similar things. They say the same 5 things, in the same logical sequence, with the same argumentative structure, written by hands that never touched, in languages that never crossed, in centuries that never overlapped. 5 identical conclusions. Separation between beings does not exist. Fear is born in the mind, not in the world, and love is what remains when fear falls. The mind does not record reality, it projects. The ego is the story we stitch together to survive fears that are not real. Everything operates as a single field where each part affects the whole. Each conclusion chained to the previous one, each necessary for the next to make sense. This gave me chills, not because of the mysticism, because of the pattern in the data. The logic is almost brutal in its simplicity. If something is true at the root of human experience, it should appear everywhere. And it does, as documentable structural convergence. The name for this pattern is perennialism. Aldous Huxley mapped the convergence. Houston Smith devoted his life to documenting it. The question, neither fully answered, why did isolated civilizations see the same thing? Pierre Hadot spent 40 years at the Collège de France investigating something that offers an answer through a completely different path. Hadot was not a mystic. He was a philosopher and historian. He studied Greeks and Romans with impeccable academic rigor, and what he discovered was that ancient philosophy, Socrates, the Stoics, Plato, Marcus Aurelius, Plotinus, was never a theoretical exercise. It was daily training in inner transformation, techniques with names and methods, attention to the present, contemplation of totality, meditation on death, disidentification with the ego, nightly examination of conscience. Practiced in philosophical communities for centuries with the same discipline a Buddhist monk applies to meditation. Hadot called these spiritual exercises. The name sounds religious. The method was surgical. Hadot's discovery that reorders the entire conversation. Greek philosophy was doing, in a completely independent way, what the Upanishads were doing in India, what Buddhism was doing in Asia. what Taoism was doing in China. No contact, no influence. His explanation requires no mysticism. The human condition, when examined with rigor and honesty, produces the same discoveries at any latitude on the planet. Entire civilizations, separated by everything that should produce disagreement, arrived at the same conclusions about the nature of reality. And we, who have access to all these texts simultaneously for the first time in human history, are too busy arguing about which book is right. The image that organizes everything is a jigsaw puzzle, the largest ever assembled by humanity. Each civilization kept a piece. Each tradition polished a fragment. None had the complete picture, and the pieces were never assembled because we were too busy arguing about the frame, whether it was gold, wood, or iron, whether it was Hebrew, Sanskrit, or Greek, whether the correct name was God, Brahman, Tao, Allah, or Great Spirit. The frame never mattered. What matters are the pieces, and when assembled for the first time, they form a picture so coherent it is unsettling. Because if 5 identical truths appear in 190 texts from traditions with zero contact between them, only 2 explanations exist. Either it is the greatest coincidence in the history of the species, or these texts describe something real, something so embedded in human experience that any civilization accesses it when it stops running and looks inward with enough honesty. The second option kept me awake 3 nights in a row. Humanity did not err by writing these texts. It erred by treating them as competitors. We turned scriptures into flags, traditions into trenches, revelations into arguments for organized fandom. We defended the favorite book instead of noticing what all the books were trying to say. The Christian discards the Hindu ignores the Sufi, the atheist discards them all. And while we fought over the frame, the picture was right there, waiting, intact. But before entering the 5 truths, there is a question almost no one asks, and that changes the way we read each of these texts. Why do they seem so hard to understand? Why did the ancients write in parables, riddles, symbols, myths, metaphors stacked upon metaphors? They did not write in code by choice. They wrote in code because they had no other way. No one can explain color to someone born without sight. The word red does not carry warmth. Blue does not deliver coolness. These are crutches, desperate approximations. The most language can manage when the subject exceeds the 5 senses, and every attempt to translate experience into syllables loses something essential along the way. The ancient texts were not trying to be mysterious. They were trying to describe something human language was not built to carry. And they knew they would fail. Every sacred author faced the same dilemma: how to place the unlimited inside a system built to name sheep, measure rain, and trade wheat. Lao Tzu opens the Tao Te Ching with the most honest disclaimer in all sacred literature. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. First line, first paragraph. Before teaching anything, he warns, "What I am about to try to say is greater than everything I can say." The instant someone puts ultimate truth into words, it is already distorted, filtered, and shrunk. Jesus operates in the same register. He speaks in parables, not for style, but out of necessity. His diagnosis is precise. Most people are not ready to receive truth directly. So he tells stories: seeds, tares, wheat, vineyards, pearls hidden in fields. Each parable is packaging. The real content is inside, but only those who open it receive. The Buddha used another strategy. When asked about the ultimate nature of reality, about what happens after death, about whether the universe is infinite, he remained silent, quiet. Not because he did not know, because the answer did not fit the format of the question. Silence was the most honest response available. The wrong question did not deserve a verbal answer. It deserved a mirror. The concrete question that organizes all of this: how do you explain God, unity, infinitude, consciousness with a vocabulary built for farming, weather, and chicken trades? How do you tell someone the universe is one before that person understands what an atom is, a galaxy, or their own mind? You cannot. So they turned to what they had: metaphors, symbols, myths, poetry, parables, riddles. And when none of that was enough, silence. The image that makes this visceral, a sunrise so overwhelming that words feel stupid trying to describe it. Now try to explain that sunrise to someone who has never seen light. Not dim light, not artificial light, no light, ever. How do you even begin that conversation? This image never let go of me. You begin with analogy, with approximation, with metaphor, and that is exactly what every tradition did. Each culture grabbed the tools it had. Hindus sculpted gods with dozens of arms, and Egyptians drew figures with animal heads and human bodies. Parallel attempts to give form to the formless. The Mayans carved circular calendars into stone, while the Gnostics stacked cosmologies in layers. Different strategies pointing to the same place none of them could name. Pierre Hadot documented a fascinating example. Plotinus and the Neoplatonists in the 3rd century faced the same wall. The one, the source of everything, cannot be described by any category of language. Every word you try to stick on it already diminishes it. So the Neoplatonists developed a technique for pointing without naming. Sentences that circle the concept without touching it. Approximations that know themselves to be incomplete. The same problem the Tao Te Ching solved by another path, on another continent. Neither copied from the other. The wall of language was as real in Alexandria as in Luoyang. Hadot noticed something even more revealing. This struggle with language was not failure. It was method. It was deliberate pedagogy. The ancient philosophers used the insufficiency of language as a tool. When the student felt that words were not enough, they were closer to understanding than when they thought words sufficed. The limit of the word was the door to direct experience, and the student's frustration was part of the method. I confess that when this became clear, it changed the way I read every sacred text. And perhaps that is why the texts seem to contradict themselves. The Tao Te Ching says the Tao cannot be spoken, and then spends 81 chapters trying to speak it. The Upanishads declare the absolute is beyond all description, and then describe endlessly. The Buddha rejects metaphysical speculation, and then builds one of the most elaborate philosophical systems ever produced. Contradiction? Only if you read at a shallow level. What they were doing was stacking layers. One metaphor illuminates one angle. Another metaphor illuminates another. None alone captures the whole. But together, like spotlights aimed at the same point from different directions, they create a three-dimensional impression of something no single word could hold. And when you gain enough distance, when you stop reading each tradition as a fan and begin reading as a cartographer, the patterns connect like constellations. Across continents, across millennia. Texts called rivals were not competing. They were completing each other. Each carried a piece of the map the other could not draw. We simply did not have the distance to see the map. Now we do. And the 5 truths these texts repeat, one by one, are more disturbing than the convergence that unites them. They begin with the foundation, with the oldest and most deeply rooted illusion we carry, The first truth destroys the most basic idea we have about who we are. The first truth holds up all the others. If it falls, the entire system falls. If it holds, the rest becomes consequence. Separation does not exist. The Upanishads recorded the most direct version nearly 3,000 years ago in 3 Sanskrit words: Tat Tavam Asi. Thou art that. The phrase appears in the Chandogya Upanishad, and it is not poetry, it is instruction. It does not say connected to, or beloved by, or part of. It says, you are the divine wearing a human costume. Diagnosis, not metaphor. Jesus transmitted the same instruction in different packaging. The kingdom of God is within you. Not in a temple, not in a book, not in Rome, Jerusalem, or heaven. Within. The Sufis compressed the idea into an image that became more famous than many treatises. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean compressed into a drop. The Hermetic tradition compressed it to 4 words. All is one. And what makes this eerie is not that one tradition said it. It is that traditions with no knowledge of each other, Taoist, Mayan, Buddhist, Kabbalistic, built entirely different cosmologies that all arrive at the same structural conclusion. Division is appearance, not reality. The metaphor that anchors this truth is the wave. When it rises in the ocean, it seems to have its own identity. Shape, movement, lifespan. But the wave is not a separate thing. It is the ocean doing something temporary. Being born is the ocean rising. Dying is the wave returning to itself. No one stopped being ocean. They just forgot for a minute. This is the image that, when truly understood, dissolves the fear of death. If the wave was never separate from the ocean, what exactly is lost when it returns? This question haunted me for weeks. The Stoics arrived at the same place through logic. Hadot documented how Marcus Aurelius practiced the regard d'en haut, the view from above, an exercise in which a person imagines the earth seen from on high, empires and human dramas reduced to dots. The goal was perspective. From above, the separation between I and other dissolves. Everything becomes a single fabric in motion. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the living connection between all parts of the cosmos, the same principle as the Upanishads dressed in a Roman toga. We think of ourselves as islands, individual, self-sufficient, separated by water. Each island with its name, its flag, its territory. But if someone could drain the ocean, they would see that all islands are peaks of the same submerged mountain. The separation was just the water level. If separation is a lie, then identity, worldview, and entire lives may be built upon a misunderstanding. From this misunderstanding, everything is born. Fear of loss, of death, of rejection, of scarcity. The chase for validation. The hunger for control. The wave desperately trying to prove it exists, separate from the ocean that made it. And from this misunderstanding, the second truth is born. Fear is the best told lie in history. Love is the only thing that actually exists. A fact that stopped me, the most repeated phrase in the entire Bible is fear not love thy neighbor, not repent, not obey. Fear not. Repeated hundreds of times in the mouths of angels, prophets, of God himself, as if the authors knew this would be the central problem of the species. Fear as enemy number 1, before sin, before disobedience, before any other human failing. Jesus was direct. Perfect love casts out fear. The Dhammapada locates the origin with surgical precision. Fear begins in the mind, not in the world. The external threat is almost always a fabrication. And Rumi, writing 8 centuries later in a completely different language and tradition, condensed the entire argument into a sentence that should have ended the debate. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. The Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, the Buddhist sutras, each arrived at the same formula through radically different paths. Fear is noise. Love is the signal. But pay attention. Love, in the ancient sense, is not romantic. It is recognition that everything shares the same origin. When we look at another human being and see that this person is made of the same ocean as us, that is love. It does not need emotion or affinity. It is direct perception. When we forget this and see threat, rival, stranger, that is fear. All violence, all greed, all loneliness sprout from this forgetting. Fear is biologically incompatible with what we are. That is why it hurts. Something in the organism recognizes that this state is an invader, not a resident. Chronic anxiety, insomnia, muscle tension that will not release. The body screaming that something is wrong in the programming. Every relationship that exploded, every act of self-sabotage, all of it traces back to fear. The ancients knew this millennia ago. No one finds love. You return to it. 2-year-olds do not need to learn love. They need to learn fear. Love is the factory default beneath the noise we stack on top. But if fear is a lie and love is what remains, how do we function day to day believing the opposite? How do we build entire lives on a foundation that does not exist? The answer is in the third truth. And it is the most uncomfortable of all. The third truth is the one that changes your relationship with your own mind, and it changes in a way that has no return. The brain does not record reality. It fabricates. The Dhammapada records this in a phrase that seems simple until you stop to measure its size. What you think, you become. Not influences, not attracts, becomes. Thought does not comment on reality, it constructs it. Hermetic texts written in Hellenistic Egypt over 2,000 years ago. All is mind. The universe is mental. The phrase sounds like a magazine headline about psychology. It was written before Christ. Hindu Vedanta developed an entire concept for this. Maya, the veil of illusion. The perceived world is not the real world. It is a sculpture made by the mind's illusions. The Upanishads go even further. The universe arises from consciousness, not the other way around. Plato used another image for the same diagnosis. Reality is the moving image of eternity. What we perceive is shadow projected on the cave wall, prisoners chained since birth, watching shadows and calling them real. When one breaks free and sees the sun for the first time, the pain is so great they want to return to the shadows. Plato wrote this 2,400 years ago. The description fits the feed of any social network. The cave changed shape. The chains are digital now. The Stoics turned this into a training tool. Hadot documented the distinction between the hegemonikon, the directing center of the soul, and the phantasiae, the representations that arrive loaded with fear, desire, and distortion. The philosopher's job was to intercept each fantasia before it became reaction. Examine, filter, return it clean. The trained Stoic did not react to what happened. They reacted to their evaluation of what happened. Two people live the same moment and experience completely different things. The same boss, the same meeting, the same sentence, and one person leaves angry while the other leaves indifferent. The event is identical. The filter is what changes. Fears, beliefs, memories, inherited patterns. None of these are neutral readings. They are projectors. They reconstruct reality before it arrives. When that clicked, I sat still for 10 minutes, because it means that most suffering comes from within, not from without. The outside world is raw material. Pain is almost always internal manufacture. Most of the wars we fight, with partners, with colleagues, with ourselves, are against ghosts fabricated by our own projector. That is why every spiritual tradition teaches the same thing in different formats: stillness, silence, presence, meditation, surrender, wordless prayer. The instant fear stops hijacking the projector, reality appears clean. No filter, no invented caption. Without the distortion, the ego stitches on top of every experience. And here enters the fourth truth. Because the enemy is not the world, not other people, not bad luck or the government or the ex. The enemy has your face, your voice, and your memories. It is the ego. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of a higher self that must conquer the lower self. The Buddha was surgical. Attachment to self is the root of suffering. Jesus inverted the equation. Whoever does not die to themselves cannot live. And the Tao Te Ching sealed it with a paradox. Whoever defines themselves cannot know who they are. Hadot found the Greeks wrestling with the same enemy. Plato diagnosed it as excess of self-love. The Stoics built daily exercises to intercept it. Different scalpels, same tumor. The ego is not personality. It is the story each person stitched together to survive their own fears. Mask, bodyguard, protective suit made of trauma, insecurity, and inherited conditioning, which later becomes a prison. It works like layers of varnish. The first layer is fear, rejection, abandonment, insufficiency. The second is strategy, pleasing, controlling, competing, hiding. The third is the identity formed on top of the first two. Over time, we forget that beneath the varnish something else exists. The ego needs separation to exist. It needs hierarchy, conflict, recognition. It is the voice that whispers, "They are judging you. You are not enough. You are falling behind. You need more." And it never shuts up. The worst part? The voice sounds like ours. So familiar we confuse it with who we are. Confusing ego with identity is the most expensive mistake a human being makes. The hidden mechanism. The ego's entire existence rests on fear. And fear has already been revealed as illusion. The ego is a second-order construction, a survival instinct that does not understand who we actually are. We are the ocean. The ego is a ripple that confuses itself with the entire Pacific. The ancients did not ask people to drop the ego out of morality. They asked because no one experiences truth while holding on to something that is not true. The densest phrase of the entire argument fits in 6 words. The armor was the wound. I stared at that sentence the way someone stares at an X-ray of their own skeleton. Everything we built to protect ourselves from fear is exactly what keeps us chained to it. The shield became a cage, and the key is on the inside. It always was. But if the mind is a projector and the ego is illusion, what happens when we look at the complete picture? What happens when we assemble all 5 pieces? The 5th truth closes the system. Without it, the other 4 float loose. With it, they lock together like gears of a clock that humanity dismantled centuries ago and is now reassembling. Everything is connected. Everything is one system. Everything influences everything. As above, so below. The Hermetic texts condensed into one phrase what other traditions took volumes to describe. The macrocosm mirrors the microcosm. The Kabbalah drew the actual map. 10 spheres connected by 22 paths. each part reflecting the whole, a diagram so precise it looks like a circuit board designed by mystics. What Hadot found remarkable was how this perception kept emerging independently, not as vague intuition, but as structured doctrine. Taoism built an entire cosmology on it. Yin and yang do not compete, they dance. Buddhism developed the concept of interbeing. The flower exists because of the sun, the rain, the soil, the gardener. The Native American expression mitakuye oyasin, we are all related, was not poetry. It was physics spoken before the vocabulary existed. Hadot found in the Stoics exactly this perception. The view from above exercise that Marcus Aurelius practiced every morning was training to feel in the body what the text described. Seen from above, the earth has no borders. Wars look absurd. The exercise was visceral, not intellectual. The 5 truths chained together produce a conclusion that is hard to digest the first time. If separation does not exist, if fear is a lie, if the mind projects reality, if the ego is the blockage, if everything is connected, then no one is a human trying to become spiritual. Each person already is the universe being human for a while. Because if it is true, it changes the weight of every decision you made today, every insecurity, every desperate ambition, every comparison with the neighbor. All of it is the universe playing at forgetting itself. When this clicked, I laughed alone, out of relief, not humor. But if all of this was written millennia ago, why does the world function as if none of it existed? How was it lost? The answer is not conspiracy. The diagnosis is simpler and darker. I confess this part of the puzzle disturbed me more than the truths themselves, because the truths can remain abstract. The mechanism of forgetting is concrete. It is happening now. It is happening to all of us. Humanity forgot who it was. It became hypnotized by who it thought it needed to be. When it began building civilizations, accumulating resources, protecting borders, surviving winters, fear became a tool. Useful. Necessary. Nobody disputes this. Fear of predators saves lives. Fear of famine motivates harvest. The problem was what came next. After thousands of years as a tool, it became habit. Then it became culture, and culture became the operating system. Fear wrote itself into our source code, and no one noticed the change. Pierre Hadot documented the concrete historical mechanism. Ancient philosophy, which was a living practice of inner transformation, became a university discipline in the Middle Ages. The spiritual exercises migrated to the monasteries. Philosophy kept the arguments, the logic, the debates. It lost the body. It was left with only the head. What was daily training for awakening became exam material. The knowledge that transformed lives became knowledge that earned diplomas. The separation between knowing and practicing became normal. It became a model exported to the entire world. Hadot spent his career showing that this amputation was the moment the West cut the heart out of its own philosophy. Every ancient text warned about the same traps. The Tao Te Ching warns that wealth leads to arrogance. The Bible forbids storing up earthly treasures. The Buddha diagnosed the root. Attachment generates suffering. They were describing psychological malware, not teaching morality. Greed, ego, power, materialism, comparison, control. Each thrives on fear. And fear, by that point, was invisible, so embedded that no one recognized it as an intruder anymore. Civilizations built on the lie of separation, economies on the lie of scarcity, identities on the lie that no one is enough. The modern world did not invent the problem. It industrialized it. That separation between knowing and practicing, which Hadot called the original wound of Western thought, became the template for an entire civilization. We built education systems that reward memorizing truths without living them. We built economies that monetize the exact fears the ancients diagnosed: scarcity, inadequacy, the terror of not being enough. We built communication networks where the ego's question, "How many approve of me today?" runs on a loop 24 hours a day, fed by systems designed to keep the loop spinning. Hadot's spiritual exercises required silence. Prososh, the Stoic attention to the present, required stillness. Every tradition placed the portal in the same location, the gap between stimulus and reaction. That gap has been colonized. Filled with notifications, headlines calibrated to trigger cortisol, infinite feeds that simulate connection while deepening isolation. The result is a species that carries in its pocket the exact opposite of what every sacred text prescribed. The signal did not disappear. The noise grew louder than it. But the signal is still there, intact, waiting, and it comes with instructions so practical, so concrete that they fit into 6 steps, transformations that happen from the inside out. The ancients did not leave only warnings, they left instructions. 6 steps that appear in every tradition. These are not commandments carved in stone, but transformations that happen when someone stops running from themselves. Hadot showed that these steps had technical names in Greek philosophy. Each tradition reinvented the same exercises independently. First, truth. Hadot found in the Greeks a word that explains why truth comes first: parrhesia. Frank speech. The courage to speak and hear truth without armor. The Greeks practiced it daily in their philosophical communities, face to face, stripping each other's comfortable illusions with the precision of surgeons. Do not deceive yourself. Do not console yourself with lies that feel warm. Face what is. In John 8:32, the truth sets you free. And there is a reason truth comes before every other instruction. It functions as a solvent. It does not build anything new. It dissolves what was never real. Every awakening begins the moment someone stops running from what is and turns around to face it. Pain shatters the illusion behind which we hide. Second, presence. Depression is living in the past. Anxiety is living in the future. Peace is living in the present. The Tao Te Ching wrote that line. But Hadot discovered that the Stoics turned it into something far more radical than a proverb, a discipline with a technical name, prososh. Vigilant attention to the present moment. They practiced during meals, during baths, during walks. Marcus Aurelius practiced while governing an empire. Nothing was mundane for someone who was awake. Jesus, in Matthew 6:34, reduced it to one sentence: do not worry about tomorrow. Presence is not a spiritual concept. It is the exit door from illusion, and every tradition placed it second, after truth, because you cannot be present while lying to yourself. Third, compassion. Follow the logic. If the first truth holds, if separation does not exist, then compassion is not generosity. It is self-care. When 2 strangers help each other in a natural disaster, nobody taught compassion in that instant. The separation collapsed with the building, and what appeared underneath is what was always there. Hadot called it Stoic sympathia, the vivid perception that every being is part of the same organism. The Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself, and the as yourself should be taken literally, as diagnosis. Plato asked for gentleness because everyone fights a hard battle. He was being precise, not tender. Fourth, stillness. The shortest instruction, the hardest to execute. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. Hadot documented how the ancients practiced exitasis, nightly examination of conscience, not for guilt, but for clarity. A systematic review of the day's thoughts and actions, run like an audit. Awakening is not accumulating new ideas. It is stripping layers, noise, illusions, stories, ego, fear, until what was always there remains. One word summarizes it: subtraction. Culture says acquire, consume, accumulate. The ancients say the diamond is beneath the layers, not on top of them. Fifth, suffering becomes wisdom. The objection arrives here. If the universe is one field, if love is the default, then why does life hurt so much? The Stoics had an answer, and it was not consolation. Haddo called it premeditatio malorum, the anticipatory imagination of suffering as a way to prepare the soul, training, not pessimism. Romans 5:3 maps the same sequence. Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, character produces hope. The Buddha grounded his entire system on this. The Four Noble Truths begin with suffering, not with bliss. No tradition promises a life without pain. They promise a life where pain becomes signal, an alarm, the body screaming that something in the programming does not match reality. We spend our lives fleeing the alarm instead of reading the message it carries. Sixth, remembering. This is the one that breaks the pattern. Every other instruction involves doing something. The sixth is recognition that the destination was never somewhere else. The Kabbalah teaches that every soul is a spark of the infinite. The Popol Vuh describes humans as the divine remembering itself through flesh. If none of this seems new to you, that is the entire point. Awakening does not arrive like fireworks. It arrives like relief, like taking off shoes that were too tight after a full day. The backpack we carried our whole lives, fear, ego, stories stitched together to survive, drops to the ground. The world does not change. The relationship with the world changes. Fear loses its authority. The noise stops convincing. The truth was never hidden. It was waiting. When I assembled these 6 instructions, the feeling was recognition, as if I already knew and had forgotten. Maybe you feel this now, that discomfort that is not pain, something moving beneath the layers. The ancients knew this moment would come, a generation with access to all the texts, all the maps at once. But they also knew that information without practice is noise. Awakening happens in silence, not in theory. And silence takes training. Haddo's spiritual exercises had structure and progression. Silence the projector, dissolve the ego, reconnect with the field. We have developed audio tools based on frequencies that prepare the mind to function, as the ancients described. A clean receiver, free of the noise of fear and ego. To discover how to activate this process and gain immediate access, click the link on the screen or in the comments. If this video resonated with you, write in the comments, "It made sense to me,"